Welcome to Always Ageless with Valerie V. Today, we want to talk about Alzheimer's and dementia. Both of those affect millions of families across the country. And yet, for many, the journey of caregiving and decision making feels isolating, overwhelming, and uncertain, to say the least. Today on Always Ageless, we're honored, truly honored, to speak with a true leader in dementia care and advocacy, someone who's dedicated her life both professionally and personally to helping families navigate this journey with knowledge, compassion, and dignity. Our guest is Ronda Wilkin, a certified dementia practitioner, educator, advocate who's worked with over 500 families, and I'm sure even more than that, in Southern California and around the country, guiding them through care decisions, crisis intervention, and placement. She's not just an expert in the field, she's lived this experience herself, making her passion deeply personal. From advising families to training future dementia care professionals to fighting for change in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., Ronda is definitely a force of nature in the world of senior care. Today, we'll uncover her why, the personal story that fuels her mission, and discuss what needs to change in dementia care, how caregivers can better support their loved ones, and what we all need to understand about Alzheimer's and dementia care. Stay with us. If you're driving, turn up your volume, roll up your windows. If you're at home, grab a cup of coffee and turn up your volume, and let's get started. Welcome, Ronda Wilkin. We are so honored to have you here today.
Wow, I am so honored to be with you. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, you're welcome. So, Rhonda, your dedication to dementia care is both personal and professional. We know that. Can you share a little bit about your personal journey and what led
Mm.
you to this field?
So I fell into geriatrics honestly by accident. My original background is in not-for-profit management. I was running one of Los Angeles's largest Jewish community centers, and I had preschool and after school and some daycare and adult programs and religious programs and senior programs. And loved them all the populations equally as important, but I was drawn to hanging with our seniors.
Hmm.
I just loved it. And so when that job ended after about 3 years, I transferred into direct senior care and opened up my first assisted living
Whoa.
in the San Fernando Valley. And there went my career. So I am it was by accident, and I've just been blessed since 2002 to be doing direct senior care. Um, when I started, there was always a family history. For us, when I opened that first community, I remember my opening remarks as the executive director talking about my grandparents because we had already started to see the family dynamics and the stresses of caregiving and Alzheimer's. And my grandfather had Alzheimer's, but my grandmother passed 6 weeks before he did of a massive stroke that we couldn't save her. So within 6 weeks, my grandmother went first from caregiver stress. My grandfather went 6 weeks later from Alzheimer's. And at that point, I said, I never want to see one disease take two people. And so my passion was truly on the side of the caregiver from the get-go, understanding that for Alzheimer's and dementia, unfortunately, it's still a terminal illness. But I didn't want to have anybody lose two grandparents. So you start to fast forward. I'm in the field, I'm helping families, I'm having this great career, but I'm watching because I've already got a family history. So my grandmother and grandfather had three daughters. And so first I traveled down this journey of Alzheimer's and challenges, helping my mom's older sister and my cousins when they were dealing with the family challenges. And my brother and I are watching, and we're watching, and we see it. And I knew it was coming. I just knew it. And we both said, we became helicopter children, right? We were not going to go down that journey. We knew we had my mother who had Alzheimer's. We dove right in, right? With all of the knowledge and everything we had, we just for us it was fine. It worked out okay. Mom did pass before dad. For our family, it's not an we don't get the easy type of Alzheimer's. Sometimes the sweetest people turn into the most not so sweet.
Oh,
And that's what I and my family we were blessed with, unfortunately. Um, there were calls with sheriffs. There were
my.
APS issues with because my sweet mom at 110 pounds, with all her adrenaline, with the challenges of the disease, was trying to hurt other people, including my father. She couldn't control her behaviors.
Ah,
He was never going to do anything to hurt her. Theirs
no.
was a love affair. Like, oh my God, what a blessing to watch. And it was quite the challenge to manage through the disease. It just was.
And then when you opened your own, um, it was a assisted living home that you started with?
So I am an assisted living administrator by certificate and license, and that's where my career was.
Hmm.
And what happened was my brother and I are in the LA area. I'm in the San Fernando Valley, and he's in the Santa Clarita area.
Uh-huh.
And we were going back and forth. My parents were in Palm Desert. And because of my father, we left my parents in Palm Desert because he had a life. He had his senior softball and his bowling and his buddies. And so we both just went into the Coachella Valley when we needed to. We placed my mom. We actually did a wrong placement, and I actually got asked for her to be removed after about 6 months. It wasn't the right one. I found an organization that was all dementia, all Alzheimer's and dementia care, and they took care of high acuity, which is the tougher ones.
Uh-huh.
Um, had clinical experts, so we placed her there, and within weeks, same resident, different outcomes. Just when you're trained correctly and you know what you're doing, completely different outcomes.
Really?
So, yeah, so one story that I often tell is at the first placement, my mom was mad. She was chasing people with hangers and
Oh,
and striking out.
oh,
And I got a phone call on a Thanksgiving weekend that the police were being called in, that my mother needed to be removed for hitting people with hangers, which obviously sent her into the hospital, which is so traumatic for people with dementia. They don't know what's going on, and which sent me down into the desert and my brother following. Again, I never went to bed without a half a tank of gas. Valerie, I learned that one early on. I needed that half a tank of gas. And so we went. We moved mom to this new community. Like I said, same resident, different outcomes with proper training, which is again why I'm so passionate. So a few weeks into it, mom is apparently aggravated and hanger situation going again. Only this time I got a phone call from the community. Hey, Rhonda, next time you come down, we just want you to know mom's clothes are all there. They're folded, they're in the drawers. She was aggravated and using the hangers as a weapon, so we just took them away.
okay.
Really?
Well, that's one
Like
idea.
now, right. Appropriately trained caregivers
Right.
and an organization that knew what to do with people with dementia.
Huh. Yeah.
There is such a huge difference. So the story that you're alluding to is what happened is 7 months after my mother got to this amazing organization and this great community, the executive director transitioned out. they knew that I was in the field and I was offered the job.
Oh,
So I was offered the job. And so what I did was I just picked up my suitcase and I would go into the desert and come home every other weekend, or my husband would come in, and we did this. But
oh,
I had my mom in my community,
no,
and it was the most spectacular 2.5 years.
oh,
I can tell stories after stories. I tell people that, she probably was the least looked after by the executive director, by me, because I had all 65 other families that needed
yeah,
me.
yeah.
And she was under spectacular care. It's what we did. We did dementia correctly. Unreal. Completely unreal.
And you
Um,
still own that community?
so no, it's not mine. It was owned, it's not mine. I was an employee for an organization. And it's called Caleo Bay, the Alzheimer's Special Care Center down in the Quinta, the Palm Desert area. Um, and again, just done right. And so I was there, had mom with me for 2.5 years. After 6 months after she passed, I was offered an opportunity to come home, open a brand new, beautiful Silverado in Thousand Oaks, which again is all dementia care, high acuity, high clinical. And I did that. And so, look, I loved my time taking care of my sweet residents in the desert and having my mom. It was a blessing. It was a
Um,
blessing. Yeah. And
if
I
you
have a
could,
lot of great stories.
oh, I'm sure you do. If you could go
Yeah.
back though and give yourself some advice when you first faced dementia, is there
Hmm.
anything you would say or have done differently or wish you had known
Wish I had known.
when you first became aware that you had a family member with dementia, when you didn't know as much about dementia as you do now?
What would I have said to myself 20 plus years ago? We just to be better educated, to understand that there are so many different dementias, and clearly understand the difference in organizations that are caring for this disease, and that there is a difference, which is what I coach now so often. Um, I may I would have made a better choice for my mom from the get-go.
Well, you would have been better educated. And that leads us to my next point. So there is certainly still a lot of misunderstanding about dementia and Alzheimer's. We know that.
Right.
You certainly know that. What do you
Yes.
wish more people knew about these diseases?
Well, often when I teach, so I start with some simple explanations. So, dementia is the umbrella. It's
Right.
kind of like saying cancer, and then you've got the hundreds and hundreds of different cancers, but cancer is the umbrella. So, in our world, dementia is the umbrella. There are many types of dementias, many, many types, but Alzheimer's is about 60%. And so people generally just say, is it Alzheimer's? But it's really not. There are many types with different, it depends on what part of the brain is affected. It depends on how old you are. The journey is honestly different for everybody, and you have to manage the difference. And so there are so many different types. We talk about Alzheimer's. There's Lewy bodies, there's vascular, there's FTD, there is Parkinson's and Parkinson's with dementia, Huntington's disease. There are Alzheimer's brought on by alcohol. And so there are so many different types of dementia. And again, what we know is that parts of your brain is honestly dying. So when I teach, just to give the audience sort of a visual,
Uh-huh.
two examples that I often use. So you and I, with a healthy brain right now, our brains weigh about 3 pounds.
Okay.
Somebody who passes from Alzheimer's or dementia,
Uh-huh.
when they pass, if you were to open their skulls, you will find brains that weigh 1 pound.
Really?
Yes. So this is a disease of the brain, cognitive disease with brain shrinkage, which is what is the biggest issue, right? So that's huge. Or oftentimes I'll look at somebody and I'll say, did you ever break, did you ever a splint on a wrist or an ankle or something? And
Right.
6 weeks later,
Uh,
you take it off and you see the atrophy. That's what our brains are doing. And yes, that's the disease we're fighting. Unfortunately, it's no matter which type of dementia we're talking about, it keeps changing. It keeps getting worse. It's progressive. They're all progressive. There's no cure right now. We are fighting like dogs for hope. We have hope. We're getting there. But unfortunately, right now, it all results in death.
so it seems, Rhonda, that a lot of families mix aging with dementia or
Mhm.
Alzheimer's, and they don't really
Right.
know how to tell the difference
Right.
because it's
It-
not like, like to your point that you break your arm or you can't see anymore or you stop being
mhm.
able to walk, right? It's very vague and for
R-
some people who don't know. So
Right.
what are some of the early warning signs that adult children or caregivers should be looking for?
So you want to just look for not the overall forgetfulness. If you misplace your car keys, I do it all the time. We all do. But if you forget you have car keys, now we've got a challenge. If you get lost driving home to some place that you have frequently gone or you can't remember, we need to be looking at those types of challenges. Um, it just starts something that somebody would remember, um, that when you start to see the forgetfulness, you've got challenges. I remember one of the um and I was keeping tabs and notes on my mom, and I was headed for a simple, less than 45-minute simple procedure. And my mom kept saying, as all moms do you want me to come in? Do you want me to come in? And I said, no, no, no. Dennis, my husband, I'm like, Dennis has it. I'm fine. I'm going to be under for half hour, 45 minutes. Simple, simple, simple. Talked about it for weeks. Do you want me to come in? Do you want me to come? No, 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 no. Okay. So the day before, just tell Dennis when you're in recovery to make sure he calls dad and I, tells us we're fine. Great. I'm in recovery. Dennis comes in. He goes, I just scared your mom half to death. I said, what do you mean? I told her you were out of surgery and she had no idea you were in surgery.
Uh-oh.
We had just talked about it, right? So
Those
those are
are,
the sort of those are the sort of things. Yeah. Those are the sort of things.
yeah. So we had a
Yeah.
guest on our show early last year, and his mom situation was that they were at a baseball game and they knew she'd been losing her keys and things, right? But she went to the baseball game and she never came back and she had no idea where her family
Mm-hmm.
was or where she was
Was
even
yeah.
at a baseball game. That
Yeah.
was kind of the straw that broke the back for that
Right.
family that, yeah, we realized that mom must have a problem. Do you
Yeah.
feel like there's a stigma around dementia? And if so, how can we shift the conversation and the fear around that diagnosis?
I think the fear is the unknown, right? You truly are watching somebody die twice, the long goodbye. It truly is because they, unfortunately, for most people, won't remember you because of brain shrinkage and they won't remember all the good times. And so but we're responsible. We have this shell of a human being that we need to take care of, right?
Yes.
I mean, Sandra Day O'Connor said one of the most poignant things. Her husband had Alzheimer's and he was living in a community. And at one point, um, was affectionate with another sweet resident that lived at the community. And she just said, I can't expect my husband to remember a marriage contract when he doesn't even remember that he's married.
Right.
And that's the saddest part. That's the saddest part for families because they don't that those are the memories that you forget. Um, I remember one of the last conversations with my grandfather, and I look like my sweet mom. With my grandfather, he looked right at me and said, "Hi, Marilyn. How are Arnie and the kids?"
Is that right?
Yeah, because I look like a younger version of my mom,
Oh,
and he must have thought he was looking at his daughter 20 plus years younger, and
and,
that's the way it works. Yeah.
and isn't one of the challenges with Alzheimer's too is that you don't know what the end is going to be like. Some people live longer, some people live a really long time, some people don't. How do you know that? How can you expect what's going to happen? And how do families deal with that, especially when you're trying to determine someone's care?
So it's honestly managed chaos. What we do know is depending on onset, we can make some judgments. If somebody has early onset disease versus more traditional dementias that you get in your late 70s, 80s, and 90s, different outcomes. Most people will pass honestly from complications of Alzheimer's because other things will happen during the journey. Most people, the brain forgets to talk how to talk to the body, and there are falls. Some
Oh,
falls are deadly.
uh,
So the death might be from a fall. Sometimes there's UTIs that go sepsis, and then you get blood infections, pneumonia, or
uh,
somebody swallows wrong and they're aspirating.
uh,
So it's truly complications of dementia. But as far as care is concerned, every family I deal with is different. And so the care plan is different. Um, so depending on if there's behaviors, and again, I'm always an advocate for the caregiver. I'm
of
an
course.
advocate for the caregiver. How are they surviving? The last thing I want is for anyone to relive what has happened to me, which, by the way, we know that when you're talking about seniors caring for seniors, 75, about 75% of the time, the health of the caregiver will deteriorate. 25% of the time, they will pass away first. So we really do need to take care of our caregivers who are taking care of our loved ones with Alzheimer's and dementias, all other dementias. It is really hard work.
And let's put in here, let's state here that caregivers isn't always, and many times
No,
is not a licensed caregiver that paid come in. Licensed caregiver could be me, could be you, right?
yes. And in fact, we know that in the state of California, so just going, so we know that, for example, now I'll just throw out a few quick numbers so that we understand the breadth of this disease of dementia. We know that there are almost over 7 million, almost 8 million people in the United States with Alzheimer's and dementias. Just in the state of California, we're at 700,000. So we are 10% of the United States. Well,
Well,
we have California and Florida have very large populations of seniors. Makes
yes.
sense. Okay, so that makes sense. But of the, and then nationally, Alzheimer's is listed as the sixth leading cause of death. In California, 1 in 3 will
Wow.
die from Alzheimer's. So
Pretty
here in
significant.
California, yeah, here in California, we pay special attention. Now, back to what you were saying, we know that there is about $1.6 billion a year of unpaid caregivers. That's you and I.
Right.
that's the adult daughters,
And
that's
what's
the
that number?
spouses.
One point.
1.6 billion a year in unpaid caregiving in the state of California.
Wow.
That's a lot of people either and again, we see it a lot. They're either giving, it's spouses, it's people who aren't working. Now it's working people coming in late, leaving early.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. You know, just to put the whole thing in perspective, so we know that we've seen like between 2000 and 2019, we saw a decrease in heart disease deaths from about to about it went down almost 8%, like 7.3%.
Mhm.
We saw an increase during that same time period of Alzheimer's deaths of
Wow.
145%.
Wow.
The numbers are staggering. I
And
so
you
want to put
said
myself out of work.
no,
I would love to put myself out of work.
but there's got to be something happening, right? I mean, those are big numbers, Rhonda. Those aren't just
Those
a little
those
bit.
are huge. Those are huge numbers. They're huge numbers. And um part of my passion and part of my love is I serve as a board member on the Alzheimer's Association for the Southland chapter. Which is our big Los Angeles area chapter in California. I'm an advocate. One of the things I love to do is go to Sacramento, go to Washington, D.C. on behalf of my families, on behalf of my own family, and make a difference, fundraise. But really, some of the biggest differences we can make are with our legislators. So if anybody in radio world listening to us right now really wants to make an impact, join us in advocacy, because we ask for bills to be changed that make things better. We ask for more money. I- Um, that's where we see these dramatic changes.
So
I was
tell
just in Sacramento a couple weeks ago.
so tell us when you go to Sacramento and you go to
Mhm.
Washington, D.C., we know why you go there. You go there to make changes, but how do you affect change? What is it exactly that you go there for and you're able to accomplish? Because on our level, we don't know. If we don't go there, we have no idea how that works.
Right, right. No, 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 exactly. So, for example, this last time we were talking about three specific bills. A lot of times it's asking for money to keep a program afloat, or in DC, we've asked for NIH increases, which we've gotten, thank God, every year. Um, so I was in Sacramento, SB 412. We were asking for additional required training for home health agencies who are sending out caregivers, additional training in dementia care, making it a requirement, because we know that when we're sending caregivers into a home, we want them prepared for anything and everything dementia related that's going to be coming at them, right? So we need to get additional training. I think that one's going to be a slam dunk. I think it's going to be really easy to do. Last year when we were up there, we asked for additional training for first responders and doctors, required CEUs for them and training. These are our frontline people who before we haven't necessarily required that they have the training. So I personally, as an administrator, have had to call a 911 for a person with dementia or Alzheimer's who was having very combative moments. And so when you do that, you call 911 and the sheriffs usually come or the police come.
Right.
I've done it in three counties. I've worked in Ventura County, LA County, and in Riverside County.
Okay.
And I will tell you personally, I've had three different reactions to how somebody comes into my world and wants to and wants to try and help, right? And what they expect. So having bills that require education so that we know for if someone's wandering, if someone's being combative, that our first responders know how to handle this will make a huge difference. Will make a huge difference. I mean, it's just so important. Sometimes we ask for money. We have dementia centers in most here in California in almost all of our largest universities. The UCs almost all have dementia centers.
Okay.
Well, right now, the one attached to USC is in danger of closing. The budget hasn't increased. So when we went to Sacramento, I was with 180 other people like myself, equally as passionate with family history, some of us professional, some of us both. And we're asking for an additional, $2.2 billion to keep these dementia centers open
Right.
across the state of California because we need to do that. We have to, Medicare, we need to require or keep cognitive testing as an annual testing that you go in for. Well, it needs to be covered
Right.
because it needs to be coded. If a doctor can't code it, I mean, think about all the annual tests we go for now, right? Our checkups are covered, for women, mammograms, whatever's covered, right? There's a code for it. Well, if a doctor can't code for annual cognitive testing,
Yeah.
they're not going to do it. If they
Uh,
can't do it,
Right.
we need these bills. So
Sure.
when we go to Sacramento and we go to DC on the federal level, we make a huge difference. It's huge. I love going with the Alzheimer's Association.
And don't you think that, I mean, we've talked about this with other people on our call, don't you think that overall there just isn't as much knowledge or awareness or interest in these senior issues on the government level? It just seems that they don't realize, we're all aging, but nobody realizes what the impact of this. Like the silver tsunami isn't coming. It's happened.
It's
11,000 people
happening.
a day turn 65. It's a huge balloon. And
It's happening. It's absolutely happening, and it's here. And again, we're in California where the numbers are exponentially so much larger, right?
yes,
So um, they listened. They listened, and the first thing I do with my team when I go to sit in front of a legislator is, have you been touched?
yeah,
Almost always the numbers are out there. So almost always my grandparent, my parent, my in-law, like there's very few people now that haven't been touched by
right.
some sort of a dementia in their life and have gone through the struggles um, and understand the financial and the care issues and all of the tools that we have in our toolboxes to be able to help and continue to help.
And to the point of caregiver,
Hmm.
the cost of caregiving is so, for example, you and I are caregivers in our family. You with your family, my mom's 105, still alive. So my mom calls and I need to run home, right? Or
Yeah,
I'm in something and my mom calls, I have to stop what I'm doing. So there, but I'm not impacted near as much as other people are. So the cost of employers who have
hmm
employees who are caregivers, right?
hmm
Or people who have to leave the workplace
hmm
because they have to care for someone. And
yeah,
because realistically, many people, many of us can't really afford for in-home care. We can't afford, people can't afford to have someone that's there 24 hours a day or 8 hours a day or whatever it is. So they do it themselves. And fortunately, because some people now are able to work remotely, some people can do that. But the overall cost of it is just caregiving is more than just hiring someone and having them come to your home a few
right.
hours a day.
Right. So I do have, I mean, this is absolutely a global health crisis. We all know it. Um, so we actually also know that 6 in 10 caregivers have given up their jobs in
See,
the last, I mean, they were employed in the last year. They gave 35 hours of unpaid caregiving. 18% of employed people went from being employed full time to part time or cut back their work. 9% of them completely gave up caregiving. Um, we know 50% of people caring for somebody with Alzheimer's is going to come to work late or leave early because of a caregiving issue. These are all, I mean, I'm giving you stats from the Alzheimer's Association, and 6% honestly just retire early. Um, so it's a global health crisis. It truly is.
and
Yeah,
Rhonda, is it, how global is it? You at the level where you're exposed to so many things on a large scale, much more than many of us. What do you see? Do other countries experience the same thing that we do? Is it a global issue? Any one
it is.
place more than another?
No, it's all about our aging population. And health does play a part of it. There are, we've heard stories of the blue zones where the healthiest people are living so long. There's one of the many types of dementias that we can do something about. Well, obviously, alcohol induced, we can do something about. But there's actually research now with vascular dementia that the healthier you stay, exercise, keep everything open, you know, get the endorphins going, all of that stuff, don't smoke, um, can actually make a huge difference. Weight loss can make a huge difference in certain types of Alzheimer's and dementias, vascular being one of them. And so, we're gonna take it bit by bit by bit, but it is a global healthcare crisis, for sure. There's no other way to put it. Um,
Well, and I'd love to
yeah,
talk more about that, but I want to talk more about some other issues
sure.
related to you. I mean, I'd love to talk
Yeah,
about what we think the is causing it on a global scale, but that's for another day. So, what resources do you recommend for families
sure.
who
Absolutely.
feel lost or overwhelmed for the first time facing this? What resources should they be looking for?
So, in the fall of last year, in October, I finally, after 20 years, stepped away from being an administrator because I really wanted to dedicate more one-on-one time. So, as a geriatric care manager, and now I actually have that opportunity with my clients to help them individually with the crises as they come along. So I am a huge advocate of what's called either geriatric care managers or aging life care professionals,
Mhm.
because what we are, I'm going to go to a sports theme. I've used this
Okay.
before.
All right.
And I'm here in LA, so I'm going Dodger blue.
Okay, you
So
can
I
do that.
apologize if you're not in LA, but I'm going Dodger blue.
And you have and you have the right to. The Dodgers have done pretty well.
So I often tell people I think of myself as Dave Roberts. I am the manager of your team, right? I'm going to put together all of the facets for you. I'm going to help you with the caregiving. I'm going to help you through crisis. I'm going to bring you any legal, financial resources that you need. I'm going to decide what player is on first, who's in the outfield, what the batting order is, and I'm going to bring you that Series team. I'm your team manager.
Okay.
But you, Valerie, you are still the owner. You are still Stan Katzen and Magic Johnson. All I can do is coach. I'm going to give you my best advice from being a professional. We can talk about it, but you are still your team owner. So I'm your manager. I'm your manager. Geriatric care managers have also been called uh, in the aviation world, the flight folks. Now I'm having
The
my
pilot.
own senior, not the pilot, the air traffic controllers. Thank you.
Okay. All
The
right.
air traffic controllers that keep all the pieces in the air and the keep
Right.
the pieces going. So because that's truly what we do, right? So we can come in one-on-one and help families in need. We can also help with placement if you're going from staying at home or choosing to stay. Are you hearing my dog?
No.
No. Okay. If you're choosing to stay at home or if you're choosing to go to a senior community, we have all of those resources and we know enough about legal and crisis care and financial and placement and all of the pieces that people need. So um, just get help. And as far as resources, most people need a support group. They need a friend. They need a hug. Um, I'm a huge believer in asking for help. So the Alzheimer's Association, other amazing dementia related organizations are there. Talk to other people who have been through it. If you're I'm lining up, I'm putting together some of my clients where I've got a spouse who recently moved her husband into a memory care community. She's gonna go have coffee with another spouse who's already living with it because they get it. They can help each other.
Right.
Um, yeah, and that's what's so important. Adult children, they need to talk to other adult children.
They do.
It's hard, and spouses need to talk to spouses. It's a different world.
Well, and my next question is, so how can adult children who are living far away from their loved one who has dementias, what are some of the effective and supportive things that they can do, or how can they help their aging parents? How can they best be involved without being involved every day?
Right. So again, geriatric care manager, aging life professionals are perfect for that. I do have some clients where the children don't live here, and I can be the eyes and ears on the ground for you and report back. Now, for me, with my specialty, having been an administrator for 20 years and in the senior field, I not only for with a dementia specialty, but I bring a different set of eyes to it. If I walk into a senior facility, senior community as an advocate for my client, I can't turn off what I did for 20 years. So I will always look at life from an administrator's point of view. But it's a benefit to both because I can say to a client, well, we need to reset expectations because here's what life in a senior environment looks like.
Right. This is
Or I can,
reality. Yeah.
this is reality, right? And this is what you can expect. Or I can go to an executive director and I can say, look, guys, I know the difference. I've been in your shoes. I've run the communities. We need to do a better job at et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I can, there's examples. So there's one quick example that I'll tell the story that I had a client, his sweet father had a mechanical chopped diet order from a doctor, which means the food needed to be cut up much smaller. The caregiver kept presenting a regular meal that wasn't cut. And my client was getting upset with the caregivers. So when he told me the story, I said, well, wait a minute. The challenge actually isn't with the caregivers. You're upset at the wrong person. Because in the assisted living world, in the dietary menus come out of the kitchen, right? There's a dietary board with pictures and anybody with a special diet. The chefs are supposed to be cutting the food differently, labeling it for your dad. The care team is just supposed to be providing the dish. So we went and we spoke to the executive director and we fixed the problem. But again, that's my knowledge. My client was upset with the caregivers. In this case, it wasn't the caregiver. It was a challenge in the kitchen. And I'm just so glad it all worked out. And so again, those are my eyes and ears. I can look at care plans and all sorts of paperwork and understand what's going on. But care managers in your back pocket are a godsend because, again, that's what we're trained to do.
So are you a private company? Are
Mhm.
you uh like a consultant? How do people use you?
So I'm a
Work
sole
with you, I should
practitioner
say.
with me. No, I know. I'm a sole practitioner
All right.
and I do charge. Most of us have an hourly charge, depending on what part of the country or the state you're in.
Mhm.
The going rate right now for geriatric care managers tends to be between 150 and 225 an hour. Most of us prorate to every 15 minutes. And so that's kind of the range for myself and my colleagues in the area.
Mhm.
Um, and we're just we're consultants. There are larger firms that have multiple care managers, and
Uh-huh.
then there's a much larger handful of us that just work as solo practitioners. You can find a really good aging life care professional through ALCA, which is the Aging Life Care Association, ALCA .com, and you can search by zip code, and then you can find aging life care managers in your area. Interview any of them, talk to any of them. We all bring different specialties to the table, and so it works.
And I'm sure that you're probably certainly the best, if not the best, certainly in our area with all of your experience. So let's just we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to ask, we've talked briefly about blue zones. There's such a thing called dementia friendly communities. Is
Mhm.
this something that some of us should be advocating for? Should we be going to um our local um authorities and talking about that in our cities?
Um, Dementia friendly communities are where they're building larger facilities, if you will. I don't like, there are certain words that just don't appeal to me. I personally, for example, don't call adults in a brief wearing diapers. Like there's just to me a vocabulary that doesn't go with the difference between a 2 year old and an 82-year old is 80 years of life,
Uh-huh.
and adults don't wear diapers. It's a pet peeve. So they are adult
I
briefs.
agree too.
But there are, again, in the realm of memory care and memory care communities, those that are more specialized and those that are higher trained. So one of the things I do as part of my love of education and continuing for training is I teach the certified dementia practitioner course
Yes.
for the national organization. There are some of us that are trainers, and it gives the caregiver, makes them feel better, right? They know what they're doing,
Yes.
and they feel more prepared. So it's a full course. So I love teaching the dementia certification course. um I would look for memory care communities that are higher in clinical care. I like those better personally. Those that will take somebody on the journey all the way through the end of their life is important to me. I'm a huge believer in hospice care as a overlay. To me, a hospice, passing a hospice death is a good death for our sweet people with Alzheimer's and dementia. Like I said, I'd love to find reasons to put myself out of work. I'd go find something else to
Well,
do.
based on the statistics, that's probably not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. I just want to continue to make a difference.
And you do. Of all of you've received so many awards and so much
Thank you.
recognition. Is there any one that you're especially most proud of?
Mm, no, just actually the
Oh.
hugs. I work the sweet, honestly, the best accolades are my sweet notes of thanks from families that I've helped and made a difference.
Do you have a story you'd like to share with us of someone who you helped and really made a difference in their life?
Oh gosh. I've honestly just been blessed to help so many through this journey, and big shoulders, and Hugs. I work for hugs. I work for love. We've all just gone through it. Just happy to make a difference,
And
honestly.
yeah, and when we're in this field, we do have to work for
We,
love.
yeah, we do. Yeah.
Because you're such an advocate on the state and federal level, what are some of the biggest policy changes that you think really need to be made?
I think we need more money for research. I think we definitely need more money for those who can't afford the assisted living communities and more money for respite. We need to help caregivers. We need to make a huge difference on caregivers, and research is going to help us with the drugs. We are in an era of treatment. We are there. We're going to get close. But thank you.
Yeah,
So,
that's got to be the biggest thing because you can think about, well, we could ask the government to start having it paid through Medicare, but just the cost of that is just phenomenal. And who's
yeah,
going to pay for it and who's going to handle
e-
that? And
exactly.
so for families that are hesitant to seek
Sure.
professional care, ICU is kind of like people wondered, yes, they could sell their homes themselves, but they shouldn't, right? Probably shouldn't.
Right,
And
right.
we all could go try to find ways to take care of our parents. I can tell you my story. You have hundreds of stories of people that
Mhm.
went out on their own and were just lost and didn't get the right care, didn't make the right decisions because they didn't know.
Right.
So,
hmm
so tell me, what would you say to people that are wondering if they should hire a caregiver, a care manager or not?
I promise we are your partner. Your life will be a little easier. It will be more managed. I want a daughter to be a daughter. I want a spouse to be a spouse. Let me come in and help manage the care. You need respite. You need a life. I want a daughter to be a daughter. I want a spouse to be a spouse. I want to give them back. I want to give them back some life. Yeah.
And then do you also help families find the right care? If we needed someone from the outside to come into our home, you help us find those caregivers?
Absolutely, that is a big portion of what I do, and I am hypersensitive and to who I refer to. Most of us are, right? I know who I would trust my own mother with, and that's who I'm going to trust into your family. Um, there are agencies that I like to work with, and I will go in and interview the caregivers first before I vet them to go into your home, and work with specific agencies that really are my partner. The same way if we do placement. So I have experts that are at placement. I'll turn a family over and put them in their good hands if someone wants to go into a community.
Well, that certainly is valuable because for
Yeah,
people like in my situation, we just don't even know where to start. I don't know the right questions to ask, and in trying to interview it, they can all they all are nice, but of course they're nice. But what does that mean? How do you know how they
right,
relate to your family and so forth?
right.
Yeah, unfortunately, our time is up. I wish it wasn't. I have
Okay.
so many more things I'd love to talk to you about, but your heart and your advocacy are truly making a difference and truly an inspiration. For those of you who are listening today, we have Rhonda's information here. We're also going to show it on social media, and also this will be available on our YouTube channel. So remember, you are not alone. There is support. There are people like Rhonda in your area. And she can refer you to people all across the United States. So please don't try to do this on your own. You are not alone. And I'm sure that that's the one thing that Rhonda would want you to know.
Dementia is not a solo sport.
No,
So please get your team in place.
it is
Yes,
not. It is not.
it's
Thank you
not a
for
solo
being
sport. You're
our
welcome.
guest today on Always Ageless. Stay tuned. Come back next Monday, every Monday at 3 o'clock for another episode of Always Ageless, where we bring guests like Rhonda who help you navigate your own life and those of your loved ones. Stay bold, not old. And thank you for being with us today on Always Ageless. And thank you, Rhonda Wilkin.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Thank you.